Welcome to another episode of the Staying Free podcast. In this episode, I spoke with Adam, also known as AdStats, who used to have a really big Twitter account talking about everything from statistics to economics to libertarianism. And he actually ended up nuking his account last year, which is quite a commendable thing to do when you've got a really big following. But I managed to convince him to come out of retirement for a longer form conversation on the Staying Free podcast. So I hope you enjoy the episode. If you do enjoy it, please give it a share on social media. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please give it a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you're using. All right, on to the episode.
So you were going to ask me about my Twitter journey.
Yeah, let's start there. Let's get into it. Your Twitter journey. Let's go.
Well, now there's an interesting one. So I joined Twitter to talk about crypto.
Okay.
That's what I got. That's what I got on there for. Find out, what altcoins are trending and things like that. Because it's a good source of information. You find out that you get kind of this quite good direct marketing with it.
Yeah.
But I'm also quite opinionated. So
are you?
Yeah, who would have thunk it, eh? So and I don't know what it is about those 160 characters, but it is 160 characters on Twitter, isn't it?
I think it's more now. I think it went to 240 and now I think it's 280.
Wow, it was 160 when I stopped. But within that, apparently I was quite good at writing concise things. And I think it kind of took off with like my following kind of suddenly, like, I don't want to say blew up, because it's not like I was like world famous or anything ridiculous like that. But, I had, I think, 18,000 followers-ish at one point. And yeah, it was largely just from posting things that were what I thought were common sense. But I suppose the thing that probably made it take off was just was representing the data that the government were presenting in different ways. And, I know from experience with my work, it's what I do. I'm the head of data at where I work. So it's I was kind of the go-to guy, and I can reframe things. So I mean, I could take the data that was being presented around the world, almost in almost exactly the same format, bizarrely, and I could make it look good, or I could make it look bad. And that's what made me think, hang on a second, if you can frame this in several different ways, why is everybody framing it the same way? And why is that always why does that way always result in more control and things like that? So I think maybe that's what people liked about it. And it kind of grew from there a bit, just reframing things. And, when I'm trying to remember things that I post, because it's funny when you detach from it, you very quickly forget what it's like.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as it came to an end, what was happening was there was three things that kind of led into me coming away from Twitter. It was starting to, what I would describe as, kind of bleed into my personal life. There would be people talk to me about it at work and things like that.
What about your Twitter presence?
Yeah, that thing. Yeah.
Oh, right. Because I thought you were anonymous. I didn't realize it was connected to your real identity.
It was for a while, but I anonymized partway through last year when it bled into my personal life a bit.
Okay.
There was that. There was also the fact that whenever I took time away from it, it was almost like a detox. I'd find myself less angry at the world and just about the kind of general political situations that kind of go on everywhere. I found I was getting kind of less drawn into American political arguments, which is, the basis of most of what seems to go on Twitter. The third thing was some other important personal news that made me just not want to do it anymore. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just before, I think Christmas Eve or Christmas morning was my last. It was like a goodbye Twitter tweet, and that was it. And I've never looked back really, other than to get some stuff taken down.
Oh, Twitter took some stuff down?
No, just to de-link my name from some images and things like that on Google. Because what I was thinking was, if I'm going to unplug, what I really love is to be able to Google my name and nothing come up.
Okay, yeah. I mean, props to you for actually doing it, because I think a lot of people, they talk about leaving Twitter and saying, oh, I'm done with it. It's bringing me down. It's too negative, etc. And then they actually just carry on and they just, or they leave for like 2 days and then they're back before you know it. I mean, I guess like aside from me spending, probably too much time on Twitter, I don't think that it actually has a negative impact on my mood or whatever. I think that, I guess over the time, maybe it did at one point. I think probably at the beginning of this whole thing, I definitely, needed to take some time away from it. I would get frustrated by it. But at this point, I kind of don't. There's something, I seem to have almost been able to develop this kind of invisible shield where I can just be like, oh, it just doesn't really affect me on a, my emotions are relatively unaffected by anything that goes on, even if I can have a heated discussion on there, which to be fair, I don't get into that much, but even if I do, I can kind of keep that distance. I don't feel like it actually gets to me at all. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like you've had a lot of benefits from coming away from it, so that's awesome. I mean, you missed on there. You definitely missed on there. You did have a big voice. Yeah, I mean, you had a big voice, and I remember when you were leaving Twitter, it was like, oh man, it's one of the titans of the kind of anti-lockdown, anti-bullshit, anti-clown world has left us. But yeah, it's good to know that you're doing good since leaving.
Definitely. It's weird to be described as a titan of the anti-lockdown and anti-clown movement. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think really there's a lot of people who have just kind of come to the fore who are, were essentially not big personalities before this, who developed a big following. And, I think it's just kind of a testament to this community that we don't just kind of, I guess, just suck up to authority figures or, oh, this person's got a doctorate. Oh, this person is a journalist for the BBC or whatever. This community is just like, no, we value people who put good information out there and, who essentially just, for instance, in your case, you're someone who is doing statistical work. And there's a few others on there, and I'm kind of forgetting the names now because it's been a while since. I guess that statistical angle has become less relevant over time. It was very relevant in 2020, probably 2021, less so. And now you don't really see much from the kind of statistical people. But there was a few of them out there. But yeah, they don't have to be necessarily some famous person or some journalist or some doctor. It's just like, if you are putting out good information, you're doing good work, and people, appreciate it, then you can kind of become a big voice. And, I think that's a good thing. It's kind of a decentralized movement in a way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So yeah, what's been on your mind since then? Now that you've moved away from that, what's the recent AdStats take?
It's the continued one. I think that it was the whole time, and it's kind of which kind of brings around to the topic that I wanted to talk about. It's kind of a revelation, if you will. It's just how much we outsource all the time, whether that's to politicians, whether that's to doctors, or whether that's to so-called experts, or even whether that's to voices on Twitter that you agree with. Because even outsourcing to someone like me, who's just kind of a faceless, well, I had a face on there with the little laser eyes, but it's just a faceless opinion on the internet. And we outsource all sorts of really, really big parts of our lives to these people. And I categorize it into three things, and that's wealth, health, probably the other way around, and then education, which is of the three, that's probably the one that I know least about, but I feel like that's the one that probably needs the most diving into. And I might not be the person to do that, but I can certainly probably talk in more detail, and it's not without statistics. I thought if I didn't come to this with at least a couple of stats, you'd be disappointed.
Yeah, of course. Give me the stats.
So, yeah, exactly. Some of the health ones are quite shocking, really. And I think a lot of people might be quite surprised by them. And I won't just kind of dive straight into it because it doesn't really give context to it. And I had to make notes for this because I was thinking that there's probably too much to try and remember. I think it's the thing when I talk about people making decisions for themselves and things like that, and how outsourcing, because obviously I'm coming from the context of we outsource loads and loads of decisions. This is bad. And I would say that I'm not kind of advocating for people suddenly ignoring their doctor's advice on things. And perhaps they're probably one of the examples where it's justified. But in every category, when I go health, wealth, education, in every one of those three categories, there's a common theme, and that's politicians and quote unquote experts. And I think that's something that's completely different. And that's something that I wonder, and it loops back around to that education piece at the end of it. And I wonder if that's how much of that is we're kind of raised to take these things at face value because someone has a certificate that says they know more than you. And even on that doctor's front, they're not perfect. They're making judgment calls generally. And I mean, I can remember with myself, I've got a partially ruptured ACL on my right knee. So that's my right, the ligament up the middle of my knee. I've got like a bit of dental floss instead of a full ligament. And I can remember the doctor was absolutely adamant. So the GP was adamant that my leg was fine after 3 appointments over a 6-month period of time. And it was only after a heated conversation that I managed to get my knee scanned. And as soon as that scan got in front of somebody, it was clearly evident that my knee was not going to fix itself and that surgery was required. So, I mean, they're still human. And, a lot of the time they're making quick judgment calls as well. Because one of the key points about the NHS in the UK is it's free at point of use. And I tend to describe that as free at point of abuse. You get people just coming in with every little thing. So doctors don't have time to deal with real issues. And another aspect of it that's really worth noting, especially with NHS staff, is that quite often what you're getting is the NHS guidance on something and not a medical opinion from a qualified person.
Right.
And that can extend to anything.
Was the seed of this thought process based on the kind of trust the experts COVID stuff, or was this something that has happened before or since then?
I'm not sure, really. I think I would probably describe the trust the experts COVID stuff, as you put it there. I would probably describe that as a bit of a wake up call. I hate the term awake when people say that. Oh yeah, are you awake? But I actually think for a lot of people who are perhaps skeptical of the current, let's call it the current system. Yeah. I think a lot of us have been kind of snapped out of it. And what's particularly interesting with that is I've got 2 brothers, and we're not in regular contact. We're terrible with it. When we talk to each other, we revert back to being like children again. Right. But we all separately came to the same conclusion. Okay. At roughly the same time. So I wonder whether you can put it down to, because we can't all be skeptical of things like that, but we all had roughly the same. We all had roughly the same conclusion about it.
Yeah. Just going back to your NHS story, like I've had definitely experiences with the NHS. I've actually had it in both directions. I've had it in one case where it was basically saying there was nothing wrong with me, or you can do a bit of physio, you'll be fine. When I knew that I had a problem, that just I sensed intuitively was not going to be resolved. Like by myself, by my own actions. I felt like I basically needed someone to give me a surgery. I just felt it. I just knew. And this was a problem with my ankle. And I was getting told, oh, it's fine. Oh, do these stretches. Oh, do these exercises. And I was just like, I just know that there's something wrong in there. And similar to you, I remember I had a X-ray initially, and was it an X-ray or an MRI? I don't know which one it was. Maybe an MRI. And he said, "Oh, we can't see a problem or anything." And I demanded to get a second opinion. And he ended up going and showing it to another doctor who was more senior, and then coming back and saying, "Oh yeah, you've got a problem here. We need to do a keyhole surgery." I've also had it in the other direction, where I had a very, very mild problem with numbing in my toe or something. And I was told that I might have a compressed spinal disc in my spine, and that I needed to avoid doing any exercise and go and get an X-ray on my spine, because it could be causing it to pinch a nerve, which is causing numbness in my toe. And in the end, this numbness was absolutely fine. I talked to a physio literally the next day. Obviously, I was pretty terrified at this news, and the physio told me, "Oh, don't worry about it. You're it'll probably go in a couple of days. Sometimes you just get a bit of numbness. I wouldn't, it happens all the time. It's very common." And so yeah, back to your point, there is. I think that the NHS, I do have friends who are in the American system. Obviously, as a libertarian, I have a bit of a conflict with this, because on one hand, I don't think that you have a right to healthcare. I think that if someone has to provide their labor and has to provide their time and has to provide their equipment, etc., that's not a right. If someone else has to provide it, that's not a right, because nobody is obligated to provide you with anything. So I don't think that healthcare is a right. I think that that's a misnomer. However, I know people in the American system, and it's pretty bad over there. Probably worse than the UK, despite our issues with it. In the USA, the amount of time you have to spend going through legal documents and finance documents and having conversations about costs and people trying to wriggle out of paying for healthcare, etc. There's obviously a problem in the USA as well, and I think probably, as is the answer with a lot of my opinions on these things, is decentralization is probably the answer, because the reason it's like that over in the USA is because people aren't going to their local doctor and getting work. You have these giant healthcare companies, etc., that are kind of causing these, or they're kind of stimulating these incentive structures to operate in a certain way. But just to kind of round up this long monologue I'm giving right here is, I think that trust in the NHS, just as trust in the American system and just in the trust of any kind of authority figure, is very often misplaced. And if you do have a hunch about something, I know that you say, if you've got a hunch, don't listen to it, because the doctor probably knows what's best for you. But actually, in my experience, if I've got a hunch about something, it's kind of been quite useful to really press on that and try and press someone for an answer, because you are ultimately the person who cares the most about your health, right? You're the person who cares the most. A doctor, yeah, they care because they're doing it for a job, and it's their job to heal you. But their incentive for you to be well is nowhere near as much as your incentive for you to be well. So taking personal responsibility for your health and not just trusting the experts is crucial, in my view. And I hope that this period has led more people to that conclusion.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it kind of you kind of segue into another topic on the healthcare system there in a way, and that's that you perhaps it's probably a bit strong to say you know what's best for you, because sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't know what's best for you. But that, when you talk about the interests of the doctor in your well-being not being anywhere near the same level that your own will be, yeah. I think you can kind of and this brings into some statistics you'll be pleased to know, and that's specifically around things like pain medication and antidepressants in the UK. Now, I don't know if you knew this or not, but about 17% of adults in the UK are prescribed antidepressants.
I didn't know that.
Regular dosing. So it's also you come across a person, it's roughly 1 in 6 of the people that you come across day to day are taking antidepressants. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there with chemical imbalances in the brain that these things will help kind of settle out. But I can't help but think that can't be 1 in 6 people. It can't be. And it's this thing of, well, the best solution that I can give you is these drugs that will make you feel less sad. But really what they're doing is making you feel less.
Yeah.
If we're honest about it. And possibly addictive. NHS says no, but there are withdrawal symptoms. Well, I mean, things that have withdrawal symptoms are normally addictive, because that's what makes them addictive, is you want to end the withdrawal symptoms. There's that. There's also, I'm going to get it up just to remind myself, because that 17% really stuck in my head, and that's 7.3 million people, by the way.
Wow.
The pain meds, opioid pain medication. So we're talking, things like Valium and stuff like that. It's 5.6 million people in the UK. This is all from gov.uk, by the way. You can just Google it and it will come up, which is 13% of the adult population. General sedatives to deal with anxiety and things like that. Benzodiazepines, I think I've pronounced that roughly right, probably mutilated it, but that's another 1.4 million there. And I think some of those are going to be combinations, but how many people are essentially doping themselves on the advice of doctors when possibly what might have helped is, something like therapy to help them process their stress and anxiety, or to deal with the root cause of what might be making them feel depressed. It's very much a culture of quick fix. Just have these tablets, they'll make you feel better, rather than dealing with the root cause of the issue. The same goes for other drugs, blood thinners, for example. This I don't have the number of people for, but I know that some 19.4 million prescriptions a year get filled for blood thinners. And so we're talking about mental health and obesity, probably, with that. I know some people have high blood pressure for other reasons, genetic and the like, but most of the time it's something to do with weight or smoking or something like that. And I don't tend to give smokers a hard time, because they raise about £9.5 billion in tax revenue a year, which kind of pays for the health service, the extra strain on the health service.
Does it? Do we know that? I'm interested to know about that, because I would assume that it does when you think about, if you're buying like a pack of cigarettes in the UK and it costs like £8 or something like 6 to 7 quid of that is like taxation, right? Like most of the cost, it's like, a good 85% of the cost. I would assume that there is a net contribution to the kind of public coffers.
It's net in profit for smoking. It costs the NHS, it's about 5 or 6 billion a year. I can't remember the number. I haven't looked in a while. But it was that was during. I think I looked into that because I thought it might be a gem of a tweet, that you get all of this bashing of smokers and the strain they put on the NHS and things like that. When in actual fact, there's a net benefit to the government of about, depending on which year you're looking at, about 4 to 5 billion profit from smokers if you offset the cost of their burden on the NHS.
What's your opinion on that then? Because my view would be, just on that specific subject, is that like if you have a public health system, then yes, it probably would make sense to offset the cost of healthcare with an actual contribution from the people who are engaging in activities which are going to contribute to it. But the problem is, if you have a public healthcare system, where does that end? I mean, do we start saying, like, I can see you've got a couple of snowboards behind you on the wall there. Yep. Like, do we say, well, you're a snowboarder, Adam, so therefore, you have to pay more because you're engaging in activity, you might break your leg, and that's going to cost a lot of money for the NHS. I mean, why should we just punish smokers and not punish skateboarders and not punish sports people and not punish, people who are doing any variety of activities? I just kind of think that you either should be consistent across the board, and essentially we just have some kind of like really weird VAT system where everybody is paying in taxation what you expect that activity to cost to the kind of public purse, or we don't do that. And if we don't do that, then I don't think that there's any justification for having a public health system at all, because if you have it, but then you're not kind of having this method of, taxing everyone for what their activities are expected to cost, then you're kind of, some people are subsidizing others, right? Like, I might be subsidizing someone else who decides to do, mountain biking or something, which I'm sure a lot of people who do mountain biking are going to break a leg at some point. I'm going to be subsidizing them under a public healthcare system. So this is why so you've got snowboards and a mountain bike behind you. So you're probably going to cost more to the healthcare system than I am, right? That you might expect that. So
theoretically, yeah.
This is why I think that even though I know it seems good and right to always support having a public healthcare system, etc., I don't see the morality in that. I don't see the morality in some people funding the lifestyles of other people, and I wouldn't expect you to fund my lifestyle either. Like there's no doubt activities that I'm going to do that you don't engage in that are risky or dangerous, and I wouldn't expect you to pay for me. So I guess my question here is going into that whole debate. What's your ideas surrounding public healthcare and where that falls on the kind of or where that contrasts or contradicts libertarian principles?
Well, on what you were discussing there with the bizarre VAT system, you were describing a tax equivalent of insurance, so a risk-based thing. I feel my view on it, as with most public services, if you call them, is probably and this I'm not going to lie, is inspired by Milton Friedman, the OG of libertarianism, well, conservative libertarianism, to be honest, and that's that there is space for a welfare state. It's needed, but it should be a crutch that's required. It should be a crutch that is temporarily required and is something that can then be passed on to the next person when they're in their moment of need and you're not. So my view on kind of any public service, and this would extend to health, welfare, anything, as in cash payouts, things like that. And that would be that there's definitely a need for it in society. Ideally, you wouldn't have it and everyone would be productive, but in the reality of a free market situation, some people, won't be as productive, and we're pack animals, and humans, that is. And I think society and a community is quite important to us as it's kind of a royal us that I'm kind of describing everybody. So it won't be to everyone, will it? But, I think in general, society and community is quite important to us. And it's the basis for what a lot of these systems came from. I think we've lost our way with it in many ways. A lot of these schemes are started, I think, with good intentions. But I'm pretty certain there's a saying about some of the worst atrocities that have ever been committed by humanity have been by people with good intentions. I don't know, that's probably not an exact thing, but I'm pretty certain there's probably a couple of sayings about things like that.
Yeah.
That's probably a wishy-washy, waffly answer to a question where I say, in principle, I'd rather it was all private, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind supporting something for people who genuinely couldn't afford it.
I think that I probably agree with you
there. But then that would be a personal choice in itself, though.
What would?
Well, if there wasn't a political system in place, I'd probably make charitable donations for things like this.
Right, okay, yeah.
Because exactly. I think they should be there, but I'd pay what I could afford or what I could justify would be the amount. What irks me is when that amount is set by somebody else arbitrarily.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. One of the things that comes to mind when we talk about this is that in developing countries where you have little to no welfare system, like, the state is not going to look after you if you're sick or need, etc. But what I notice is that these places, family generally takes care of people way more than we do in the West. It's like, if you have a relative who isn't able to live on their own or whatever, they don't go into the old people's home. They go and live with the family. And also just in other ways, like people who are really poor, quite often they're cash poor, but they actually, very often they own the property that they're on, they own the land that they're on, they grow their own food, or they have backyard animals or something. They actually are much more self-sovereign. So even though we look at them and say, okay, well, yeah, of course they're poor. This is basically how places like, Vietnam and stuff have been able to weather the storm of COVID lockdowns and close their borders for, over 2 years. Because people, yes, obviously tourism and things, they bring in money, and yes, they have other aspects of bringing in money like exports, but actually poor people, they don't necessarily need cash flow every day. because they actually are relatively self-sustaining, and if they're not, there's people in the community who help look after them, or they have family, etc. That, you know, the government doesn't need to bear like kind of the brunt of that weight. They don't need to just, you know, give everyone money, etc. So to apply this to what we're talking about, it's like, if you don't have that safety net there, normally what happens is society will actually change culturally to provide a safety net. And it won't be the government's safety net. It will be a voluntary safety net, which evolves based upon culture and society evolving. And actually, in my view, that's more ethical, because nobody is being forced through threat of taxation or through essentially threat of jail to actually provide these things for other people they've never known or never met.
It's threat of violence.
Yeah, through threat of violence, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that kind of moves on to the next bit really of the three pillars of what we royal we society outsource, and that's wealth. Mm-hmm. This is kind of in a very Western sense. This because we, you know, and that's I kind of view that as kind of money in general, but I wrote down here savings, but in reality it's kind of money in general, how we borrow, how we save, what interest rates we're willing to pay and earn depending on what our circumstances are, depending on what someone else, quite often a third party it used to be, and then now an algorithm will say about you and your track record. That's what decisions it makes, and that ultimately leads that outsourcing, that lack of decision making, lack of planning, perhaps about that, almost certainly. Got some stats for that as well. You won't be surprised. Which then leads on to kind of instability and dependence on the state in retirement. Yeah. Which is again it's a big topic for me, because I'm not sure which came first, Ponzi or pensions. Because they talk about a Ponzi scheme as the scheme where, you know, somebody you invest in. Because I mean, it was wasn't this guy with the surname Ponzi?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's where it came from. Yeah. So you gave him your money. He then spent it. Someone else invested in him, and then he then gave that to the person who originally invested, and so the scheme continues. And pensions, when they were originally pitched to the public, was going to be a pot of money that you paid into that you could then draw down on in retirement. It was going to be a public savings account, and in reality it wasn't and is the current generation paying for the last generation of workers who don't have sufficient savings to sustain themselves. And it's not everyone who claims a pension. And to many people, it's not their fault. They'll say, well, it's just the way it is. But it's one of those things. I was talking with a mate the other day, and I said to him, it could end with one generation. How's that? It's easy. If one generation says no, the next generation doesn't have to pay for them.
Mm-hmm. But wait, they're saying no to paying for the previous generation?
No. The one generation that says no to claiming it. You need a generation of people to make the selfless act and say no, I don't want to, but it needs to be the whole generation. It needs to be everybody saying no.
But we're talking here just about state pension, right? Because if people have a private pension, you are paying for your own pension.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's completely separate issue. I'm talking about the state kind of welfare for retirement pension.
Got it.
And I mean, but then I think to myself, and perhaps I don't know whether I kind of expose a bit of is nihilism too harsh a term for it? Let's call it a lack in faith in my fellow man. And that's and this is according to the source I found this on was finder.com. And I just Googled something along the lines of how much do people in the UK have in savings? Yeah. Well, 1 in 10 have no savings, none, not a penny. 1 in 3 have less than £600.
Wow.
This is all in 2020, by the way. And 41%, it's actually 40.73 or something, don't have enough to live for 1 month without income.
Wow.
So then I think to myself, that's the current state of affairs. So we're talking more than 2/3 are in no position to to start with. I don't know the age profile of that, because, what you could be talking about here is comparing 18-year-olds and 60-year-olds and things like that, and they can be in completely different financial circumstances. So the statistics might be framed to look quite damning. So I feel like I need to say that if I'm going to be the person who says you can frame statistics how you want. This is what I found on the internet. But I feel like it's quite unlikely that in a society that I think is where actions are quite selfish. So individual actions are selfish, but then people claim moral high ground through making political decisions. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the actions we take by claiming money from the state, let's say, are selfish decisions. We want that money. We feel like we're entitled to it, or we need it, whatever it might be. But then we vote to say that, other people should be able to have that as well, rather than making the decisions through life to say that actually other people should just have a right to their income, the fruits of their labour.
So this aspect of not having savings and stuff, and people not having enough money to kind of carry themselves through, how does that relate to what you were saying about trusting in experts or kind of external entities?
The obvious external entity is the state with this. I don't need to save for retirement because the state will sort me out. I'll get a fuel subsidy, I'll get pension. If I don't have any savings, I'll even get an extra little top up on my pension. So there's that comfort blanket there. So we outsource our financial security, and historically that was always something that was done to the kids. And this is, I can't remember who it was who told me this, but something about, I saw something about it, generational wealth. And we used to have loads of multi-generational households used to be really common. And what you would have is the parents own the house, the kid lives in the house and then stays in the house and pays the utilities for the house, then inherits the house from the parents, and you have this so the retirement is almost funded by the children who aren't necessarily paying to sustain and feed you, because you would do that from your savings or from renting out another room to a lodger. But that house would then stay there. That would be a kind of base of operation, your piece of the world. Whatever your surname is, you could stamp it on the door and it's yours forever. And it kind of stresses the importance of property rights in general, which is something that Thomas Sowell writes about a lot, how it's one of the bases for economic growth is property rights, because people have got their roots in. But anyway, I digress massively. So there's obviously the outsourcing to the state there involved, and people generally as well. They outsource to banks, custodians of their money, who give them almost nothing in return. It's give them nothing and take from.
They're also custodians of the property.
Yes, interestingly, if you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, if you owe them money on a mortgage, which I do on my house, owe money on a mortgage, I'll pay it off eventually. I'm not. It's not some ridiculous 40-year jobby that people do, or just these interest-only ones. It's quite common as well. But yeah, by default, it's theirs.
Yeah, and interestingly as well, when you were mentioning about people inheriting property from their family, but you've also got inheritance tax. It's like every avenue for people to actually maintain kind of sovereignty over their wealth or sovereignty over their property these avenues are all being closed, because every time there's an option, the government closes that down and says, sorry, now you can't hand down this, that's classed as a gift, and if the gift is over a certain value, then it gets taxed at this amount, etc. And people cheer this on. I see this all the time. I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, Richard Burgon, I think he's called. This I think he's a Labour MP.
Labour MP, yeah.
Oh, this guy, honestly. I mean, I see him all the time on my feed, and I see people who are like awake, like liking these tweets by this guy who is, people talk about populism. Sorry, I'm going to just digress a moment here. People talk about populism, but this guy basically just completely has no respect at all for property rights. Every one of his tweets is just, we should take more money from this person. We should tax this person more. We should do this. We should, people are selling $1 million homes. We need more of that money. And it's like, just a complete disregard for property rights, first of all. And people actually really kind of sign on to this. That in my opinion is true populism. You basically throw out first principles in favor of trying to kind of rally a majority. You try and rally a populist movement, but rather than doing it by saying we're going to give you more rights and freedoms and more sovereignty over your assets, etc., you say no, we're going to take those people's stuff and we're going to redistribute it. That's true populism in my view. But anyway, to bring it back to the original point, people will kind of get on board with this stuff because they think, oh, well, that's just for billionaires. They want these property taxes for billionaires. They want inheritance tax for billionaires, and everyone else is going to benefit from that. But what people will inevitably find is that all that's happening is that the state is inserting itself in between every transaction, including things like giving your own property, and there's no doubt that this will grow like a cancer to the point where you want to give someone a television, you want to give your especially when we have CBDCs coming in and stuff like this, everything will be tracked, and it'll be like, oh, I want to give a television to my son or whatever that I've used for 10 years, and now I want him to have it in his bedroom, and I'll be like, oh, well, that's now a taxable event. Sorry, that you technically gifted something, so we need to track the value. We're now talking about unrealized gains and things. So if you have something you haven't even sold it, the government wants to tax it. I mean, people are celebrating this stuff because they think it's just going to apply to billionaires and millionaires. But to kind of come back to your original point, what's happening here is that the government is becoming a unnecessary intermediary between almost every interaction in life in order to kind of sustain itself. In order to, it's like a parasite that needs to sustain itself. And everyone suffers because yes, okay, it might start with a billionaire, and you can clap away because only one person has essentially had an unjust act done unto them. But that's gonna find its way to trickle down. That's the real trickle down economics, right? Like, it's the trickling down of tyranny from just tyrannizing billionaires and trying to take their assets to eventually it's arrived at your doorstep.
You say that, but actually dodging things like capital gains tax they're surprisingly easy. You can dodge the majority of it with a trust fund. The other way that you can do it is have your property owned by a company. Then you just make your kid the managing director.
Yeah.
You can even probably pay them a signing on bonus for taking control of the property. So when this is one thing I find particularly interesting with this sort of, as you describe it quite aptly, these populist political policies from people where they'll say, oh, we need to tax the rich and we're going to do it this way by taking their property away and things like that. They almost never feel the pinch of it. No, exactly. Their property is tucked away in multiple corporations in separate tax havens and things like that, and they'll never see it. It's normal people. It's normal people who own something more than average. I think what's the rate if you're passing on a property? I think it's 500k is the value of the home. Anything under that, and I don't think there's capital gains tax. But if you've got more than that, it's quite a big number for anything over that. It's about 40%. Yeah. And we're not talking huge amounts. If you live in southeast, it's a nice house, but it's nothing special. Yeah, probably in Newcastle or something, it'll be something quite special. But I don't think there's any consideration to regions or anything like that, nor should they be really if you're going to do something like that. But I suppose the point is, I don't even think these things trickle down. They just start straight away at kind of the middle class and then work their way down from there.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that is a big part of this, is that all of these rules that people think people are celebrating because, oh yeah, billionaires are going to pay more, millionaires are going to pay more. Regardless of the ethics of that, which I think is unethical in itself, because I don't see any reason to take more from people if it's been earned honestly, and if people have honestly provided a good or service that people want to buy, and that they have accrued wealth through that. As far as I'm concerned, there's no reason to steal from those people any more than there's real reason to steal from someone who's an average Joe on the street. But exactly to your point, those people aren't going to be affected anyway, because they can pay a lawyer a fraction of that money, and they can make sure that they're unaffected by all of those regulations and rules, and that they're never going to pay that money anyway. So the people who it ends up affecting is always the middle class. And yes, okay, the working class aren't affected because they can't be squeezed anymore. People say, oh, the working class, they're not affected because, this, that, or the other. Like, as soon as the working class earn more, they're going to be squeezed because they'll enter the middle class and then they will be affected by this stuff. Literally, the reason they're the working class is because they've been squeezed so much that there's nothing more to squeeze from them. So there's no point in trying to get, for instance, additional taxation out of people who, as you say, they don't have savings, they don't have any more money, they can't be squeezed anymore. So what this inevitably does is just squeezes the middle class more. So the rich stay just as rich as they did. The middle class become increasingly to the level of working class where they can't be squeezed anymore, and the remaining people will just be taxed to oblivion in whichever form that takes.
Although there is a way, if we're gonna switch to a bit of economics, there is a way that you can tax the working class quite effectively, and that's inflation.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Let's go there.
It's a great little weapon that you can use, and I mean the last couple of years have been a fantastic example of it, and that's where you can massively increase the supply of money. I think something like 20 to 25% of all pounds and dollars that have ever existed were printed over the last 24 months. So you massively increase the supply of money, and people think, oh, if you gave everyone £1 million, everyone would be better off. I mean, I'm not even going to go into why that's stupid, but that's so kind of part of that kind of comment. But if you massively increase the supply of money, you by nature you increase the price of things because there's more money about. If you don't then increase the minimum tax threshold to correspond with that increase in monetary supply, that will inflate the price of everything by the same percentage. Because people talk about, oh, inflation was 8% or whatever. Yeah, actually go around a supermarket, look at a petrol station, definitely look at your gas and electric bill. It's probably overall 15 to 20% inflation.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the minimum tax bracket increase by that amount. So everybody's paying a little bit more tax.
Yeah.
Even people earning 12, 13, 14K a year, which I think would be below minimum wage now anyway. But I think minimum wage is floating around the 19K mark at the moment. And I mean, they'll be paying more tax as a result of it as well. And it'll impact you more at that level as well. I can't remember. I did something on this a little while ago. I haven't got it to hand, but it's from memory. And I increased the annual salary in brackets of about 2,000 or 3,000. And if you do emission creep over a number of years, or bracket creep, I think Milton Friedman might refer to it as, with this inflating but not increasing the base tax rate. The higher your earnings, the less it affects you, obviously. So despite the fact that you'll be paying more taxes, yes, obviously, but your disposable income is at a rate where it can almost become beneficial after about 4 years I worked it out. It became beneficial if you were on a higher income to have this bracket creep in such a way, but obviously it diminished fast the lower your income was. So yeah, you can hit the working class pretty hard just by increasing the supply of money and not raising the base level of the base income tax threshold.
Yeah, and there's so many people who don't actually realize what inflation is. I think that if you were to ask people on the street and ask them what inflation is, they would just say, oh, well, it's an increase in price and stuff, which is part of the story. But actually, most people wouldn't be able to say, this is what is causing inflation. Like, they would have no idea what the root causes are. And, there is another definition of inflation, which is it's not measuring the increase in prices. It's actually measuring the increase in the monetary base without a proportionate increase in the goods and services rendered in a society. So you essentially just printing money without actually having, additional goods and services, et cetera, in a society is inflation. Now that causes price increases, but it's not defined by the price increases, right? And I think that's a really good definition, because it's easy to talk about inflation. People just don't understand it. And, I really worry because we don't teach people about this stuff. And, people who are interested in it, or, who are kind of inclined like you or I, we're going to look into this stuff. And then we're going to come to the conclusion that, okay, we need to adjust our financial strategy in a way that accounts for this effect. But most people, they think that inflation is just some magical thing that just occurs spontaneously and no one can quite control it and no one can understand it, and you can't really do anything about it, so you just have to deal with it as a society. And it's almost like these people are getting away with it. These people who are just printing money and flooding the system with liquidity in whichever way they want to kind of enrich themselves are getting away with it because people are just so financially illiterate that they just don't see what's going on. I mean, I don't know how you get around that come back to one of your three pillars, which is the education aspect, right?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. I wouldn't hold out for education on proper economics. I know most economics subjects that you see discussed, I would describe as not. You could just say actually it's not economics. It's Keynesianism, or whatever you want to call it. It's all the work of John Maynard Keynes that you'll learn in school about how we need to stimulate the economy by printing money and things like that. So it won't come into it. And one of my favorite things to talk to people on this topic to see if I can blow their mind with it sometimes is actually, if you don't play around with the supply of money, so let's say there's X number of pounds that are in circulation, that's the forever supply. This is why I like Bitcoin. There's X number. I'm going to flip back to Bitcoin. I've got to do it. We couldn't not mention it, could we?
Yeah. We'll have to do a bit on it.
Yeah. So there's X number of Bitcoin. That's it. 21 million is the magic number, although it's less than that if you consider lost ones and things like that. But let's stick with that 21 million. That's the number. If you increase the number of people, you increase the amount, you increase the requirement for products and services for those people. If you don't increase the supply of money, prices deflate.
Yeah.
They have to, because there isn't enough money to go around. And that's what should happen in a monetary system that isn't interfered with. The measuring unit of the amount of money you have, the purchasing power of it should not go down. You should be able to buy more with your money this year than you could buy last year. That's how it should work with an increasing population, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And it's quite a difficult one to explain, though.
Yeah, it is, because we've been propagandized with Keynesianism for all of these years as if this is just the obvious way to run an economy, and Austrian economics has just been kind of completely buried as a system, as if it's some kind of quackery, even though it makes perfect sense. I mean, Austrian economics is actually based upon true market economics, and Keynesianism is based upon people coming in and waving a magic wand and expecting to be able to get something for nothing, and to kind of perform this kind of financial wizardry and make things happen in an economy. But eventually the market always comes back and bites in the arse anyone who tries to overcome it through their own ideas and opinions. Ultimately the market has a way of operating, and Austrian economics just aligns with that. It just aligns with the concept that people want a unit of account which does not inflate, which is reliable, that nobody can just all of a sudden say, okay, there's loads more units now, and then you can truly price goods and services within a society, right? And one of the interesting things about this, and more people on the left should be on board with this, because I'd never thought about this, but I kind of heard about this concept last year, and it kind of really blew my mind, which is, yes, of course, you expect the prices of things to come down, but you also expect the price of labor to come down as well, right? Because labor is just another thing in the economy which is being affected by the monetary supply. But the interesting thing about this is that right now, every single year, you have to say, oh, hey, you have to talk to your boss and say, I'm going to negotiate a raise, right? Because inflation's going up, as you said, probably somewhere around 15 to 20%. You need to keep up. So you have to go and, hat in hand and beg your boss for a raise. But under an Austrian economic system, your boss would be coming to you and negotiating how much it goes down by. And you would be saying, look, I want to keep my wage the same. Maybe you want it to go up a bit, but it might be a matter of saying, just keeping my salary the same, I'm actually net earning more because I can buy more goods and services with that money. That would be amazing for the kind of social ladder, because it completely flips the dynamics between the employer and the employee to put the ball in the court of the worker rather than the employer. I mean, leftists should be loving that.
Exactly. It's the thing is there's no short-term gain, and it doesn't work for I find with the political left, and the right's not much better these days because I'm not a conservative. I'm not. I'm homeless really, but the political left it very much has its very basic slogans that appeal to people who haven't thought things through, I find.
Yeah.
So when you discuss these policies and the actual probable impacts of them, and people, they haven't given it any thought. They think that you're speaking, that doesn't make any sense. When we talk about, the power would flip to the labourer because the labourer has to say, well, my contract says you pay me, one. I'm just going to make up one Kwarlock an hour or whatever the currency is. I don't know why I picked that word. That's what the currency said. That's my contract is 1 an hour. So I'm not going to reduce it to 90.95. No.
Yeah.
You need to keep paying me, or you need to go and find someone else who hasn't got my same level of experience. And so you actually you give power to the labourer by not mucking about with the financial system, as you say, but a lot of people won't think about it that way. When they say, but I don't understand how if there's more people, how the price of it can come down. Well, it's not the price, it's the amount of money it's the value of the transaction compared to the number of things. It's so ingrained, this notion that things have to go up in pound value because we don't see it's because I suppose nothing's really got intrinsic value anymore, does it? Except for, let's not ignore the elephant in the room in Bitcoin, because people say that's got no intrinsic value, but actually the market gives it that intrinsic value because there is a legitimate thing, even though it's only digital, it's a legitimate thing that you own that is just worth that. Everything else that goes on around it is just noise. It's just whatever it is, 0.1, 0.05, whatever it is, that's what you've got in that. And the idea that you could buy more with that 0.1 or whatever it is that someone's got, the idea that you could buy more with that next year than you can this year is mind-boggling to most people. The only way you could do that is if you sold it and swapped it for pounds, and then you'd have more pounds or dollars or whatever it is.
The natural way that an economy wants to function, in my view, is it wants to have a truly scarce store of value. I mean, really, money, the advent of money started with kind of precious metals, right? Obviously gold being a big one, but also silver and also, nickel and copper and all of these metals, which had a scarcity aspect to them. That was the scarcity aspect was the important thing. I know people, gold bugs and stuff will talk now about saying, but it has intrinsic value because it's got value as jewelry and this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, yes, it has value as jewelry because it has value as money, and therefore flaunting your money involves putting it around your neck. But why is it valuable as money? Go back to it. It's the scarcity. Gold is, yes, okay, you can use it in some electronics and stuff. There's an argument to be had there, but it's actual the value of gold for its use in electronics is absolutely tiny, right? So ultimately, scarcity is the key thing about money. Now, Bitcoin is not just scarce, but it's also can be transacted, almost feeless and at the speed of light. So this is what fundamentally changes the paradigm, because gold, the reason it failed is because it's very difficult to move about, right?
Portability is an issue, yeah.
Yeah, portability, divisibility, these things are all like an issue with gold. And they're not an issue with Bitcoin. So it's solved for so many of these problems. And that's why I think that even though people don't really understand yet necessarily about Bitcoin or about they don't understand both the asset, but also the monetary theory that surrounds it. But I think that people will be drawn into this thing out of sheer kind of economic necessity. People will look at this and say, why is this thing going up in value? Why is this valuable? And ultimately, even people who they don't like Bitcoin, economic rationality is a hell of a drug. I think you're gonna be pulled into this thing because you don't want to be just watching all of your assets, or essentially your money, melt like an iceberg. You want to put your money where it's going to grow in value. And Bitcoin has the potential that no other investment in the world does. Nothing else does. I mean, including things like houses. Okay, houses have done pretty well over the past 50 years or whatever, because they've done well in absence of a hard money. They are serving the purpose of scarcity, because they're pretty scarce. They're a scarce asset. Obviously, there's only so many houses that can be built, etc. But they're not as scarce as Bitcoin. Like it's gonna, in my opinion, suck, rightfully so. And this is another reason why people on the left should be getting on board with it, is it's going to suck the monetary premium out of houses, and that's going to allow people to actually get in the housing market without having to get in huge amounts of debt, etc., and pay off mortgages for the rest of their life, because you can actually hold another asset which serves that purpose as being the scarce asset, which accrues value over time. That can be your store of value, and the house can be the thing that you buy and that you can actually live in and own without taking on huge amounts of debt. And that won't serve the monetary premium, but it will give you a roof over your head and kind of escape you from debt slavery.
It has its utility.
Yeah,
it has its utility, a house, doesn't it? That's the thing that it's that's the other thing that drives its value, is you have more people than houses, don't you? More buyers than sellers. I think people will get there eventually.
I think so. I think that some people will be kicking and screaming, but eventually, Bitcoin is like a black hole. You don't necessarily need to understand it to benefit from it. And I think a lot of people will come to that. But just to zoom this back out to your kind of three main pillars, because I feel like we've gone down several rabbit holes and maybe not addressed the kind of core issue, or certainly not referred back to it. So I'll just throw that back over to you to kind of like tie this into those kind of three key areas that you were mentioning at the beginning, to just kind of tie this whole conversation up, and then we'll start rounding off, I guess. Cool.
Well, I mean, we were partway through wealth and we had to talk about Bitcoin, didn't we? I think one of the things that resulted in us being in this situation where nobody has any kind of financial backing, nobody has any security, is that nobody follows the concept, and this is of pay yourself first. Have you ever read the book, The Richest Man in Babylon?
No.
No, I'd recommend it. I'd recommend it to anyone listening to this. It won't cost you much to buy. It's a little book. It was written in the 1920s. Can't think of the guy's name who wrote it now for the life of me, but it's based on this character called Arkad, who was in ancient Babylon 4,000 years ago. And these kind of financial principles that he has that are the key to getting rich. And the first one is pay yourself first. And he has not an argument, but he has a conversation with someone in the book about it. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I don't remember it word for word, except for those three words, the pay yourself first. And the person says, well, I do pay myself. I go and buy clothes and I get myself food and I pay my rent, and that's all for me. So I've got my house, or I buy the bricks for my house and things like that. And he's, no, you're paying other people. That's You've paid them for the clothes. You've paid them for that food. You've paid them for that trinket. You've paid them for that cup or whatever thing they might have been buying at the time. And I think this is another thing, and it's something that we outsource again. And that's the what we buy. I don't think people give enough thought to the things they buy. And I know how. There's another revelation I've had. I'll kind of draw back to at the end, because I kind of got some ideas on how you can kind of accept and try to start overcoming these things. And this is very much a symptom of social media. This is another thing, because when I came off Twitter, I came off everything. Facebook, Instagram, everything. I was myself on those platforms. I didn't have a secret profile where I was this kind of this angry libertarian who just moaned about everything. And what I found was, when I wasn't subjecting myself to this constant direct marketing, I wasn't buying pointless bits anymore. Just tat just kind of made in China tat that people buy all the time. This constant stream of it. And actually, it goes back to this principle of paying yourself first, because that's what's talked about in this book. It was written in 1926 about this character from ancient Babylon. Is people buying tack. just bits and bobs that they don't need, and it's because they saw an advert in a paper, or like we do, we saw it on the magic shiny thing that everybody walks around looking at in their hand. That incidentally, I don't look at anywhere near as much anymore without social media. But we outsource so many of our decisions to technology. Is kind of where I was going with this, or technology or media, just in general, just by allowing ourselves to be bombarded with these things and spending our money and not paying ourselves first as a result. And the idea of the paying yourself first is saving. That's all it is. That's all he's talking about. It saves some money and it gives you a comfort for retirement. We didn't get into education, did we? I think we need to. We kind of we alluded to it.
Do you want to touch on it, or do you want to save it for? We could save it another conversation, but if you got time, I'm happy to go into it.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't got that many notes on this because I'm not going to proclaim to being I'm not an education expert, but it's definitely something we outsource. So
yeah,
mostly to the states. With state schools filled with with activist teachers. I'm not the only person who says things like that. I think it's quite a common thing. What I find hilarious about that, though, with the number of activists you have in state schools, is that in the UK there is literally legislation that makes it illegal for radicalization of children in schools. And you look at the state that some come out with, climate alarmism and things like that. It's no different than any other kind of ultra conservative apocalyptic warning. And the sinners will get us all killed, because instead of God smiting us or whatever smiting us, it's CO2 and so they come out radicalized anyway, even though apparently there's rules against it, which is brilliant. But the other big thing that we outsource with, because education kind of brings in raising your kid, it does, and it's a touchy subject for a lot of people. It's raising your kids, and so many kids now are raised by technology. They're raised by their smartphones, by their iPads, by the television, by YouTube channels, listening there with headphones, playing video games like Minecraft, which, to me, Minecraft is literally the video game equivalent of manning a deserted checkpoint in Soviet Russia in the 1970s. It's literally the video game. Here you go. You go to this point and you just stand there and do nothing. What am I looking for? Nothing. No one's coming. You just stand there. And there's kids playing it. They're prepped. They're ready to follow instructions. This is what you do. You need to put the block over there, and that's it. Oh, nobody goes, why? What's the point?
Is it just communism in the metaverse?
It's bizarre. I was watching it. I was talking with my niece and nephew. Why'd you put that there? I just say you just do. What's that? There's no point to it. So it is the ultimate. And yeah, what do? You just move that box from that place to that place, and that's what I do day in, day out. It's like out of Brave New World or something like that. Because people always talk about 1984 when they talk about dystopian books. Well, it's great because it is. I think Brave New World is probably closer in a way to what we're seeing.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times. I've not read it yet, but I really want to. I've heard that it's there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah, it's a brilliant read. Great characters But yeah, that type of thing where people are born for a purpose, it would kind of make sense into they would have their social grade, and their job is to just move boxes from this place to that place, and that's what they do. And there'll be other statuses, and they have other purposes in society which are higher, and they might need to be able to think critically. So yeah, we outsource a lot of those things to other video games as well. Ones with. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, violent video games are why kids are violent, because there's more to it than that. But I worry sometimes that, these, it's got to have an effect, hasn't it? A young kid without context playing a video game like Call of Duty, it's got to have an effect and some kind of detachment. But I don't know enough about psychology really to fully comment on it. But with this kind of never-ending supply of flashing images and sounds and interesting things to look at that come from that come from this smartphone that, you know, mummy and daddy are sitting there looking at non-stop. They're flicking through Facebook. Oh God, look at that cat, non-stop. I worry that they won't have an imagination.
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are, but I mean, I'm 36, coming on 37, and smartphones and phones weren't even a thing when I was a kid, and I'm not even that old. But when I was little, there was no phones. We played with sticks and played hide and seek, manhunt, things like that. We'd go out and use our imaginations, and because people think, oh, it's just imagination. What's that? Well, actually, imagination is like one of the most important things. If you want to solve a problem, you need to be able to imagine a solution. You need to be able to think. I read a psychology book, and there's a concept in it called counterfactuals. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically what it is putting yourself in a situation, and it's simple. Quite often, you know, when you make a decision and it goes wrong, and you think, oh, if only I'd done that, then it might have gone differently. That's counterfactual thinking. But using your imagination to create a scenario where you're playing a game or where you're fixing a problem, where you're going, well, actually, if I turn that the other way and slide it in there, it'll work. That's also counterfactual thinking. And you practice that when you're a kid. That's what they're doing. They're making up friends, and the stick isn't a stick, it's a lightsaber or whatever it might be. Yeah. And they don't need that, because you can get a cheap lightsaber made in China for £7 or whatever, or you can play this video game, and you don't need to. You put on this headset and you can just, it's all real. You don't need to imagine. And I worry that will have a lasting effect.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, I always used to think, oh God, you know, these kind of older people who kind of look down on me playing video games, you know, whether it was grandparents or whatever, it's like, oh, you're playing too many video games. And I was like, oh, you know, I'll never be that old person. I'll be the cool old person who kind of looks at kids playing video games. And I'm like, yeah, you go play those video games, you know, like have fun, enjoy yourself. And, you know, I'm 31 and I'm already that old person who looks at kids playing video games. I'm like, go out and play with sticks, go out and ride your bike, you know. I mean, for me, technology came a bit later. Like I think I had a Game Boy was like my first bit of technology or something, or actually no, it was like a Sega Mega Drive. But even then it was like you play it with your friends. It was like everything was like 2-player from what I remember, and you play with your friends, and then you go out and you play, and during the summer it was always outside. And yeah, I mean, where I'm from, like I'm from quite a rural area, and when we were younger, you would go out and you wouldn't even call your friends to say who's playing out. You'd just go out on the street and they would be there. You'd walk around, you go to the field or whatever. The kids were all there playing football. You wouldn't even need to organize it. And when I go back there now, and I know there's just as many kids, if not more, because you know the village has doubled in size since I lived there. But there's no kids out on the street. You know, like they're not out playing. You just don't see it as much. And you know, I'm pretty sure this is because kids now are so much more ingrained with technology. Which, you know, and I'm not saying there's no benefits to that. Like, I'm sure that that's useful. We need technologically engaged kids because technology is such an important part of, you know, being a human now. But like getting rid of play, like traditional play that we're kind of genetically predispositioned for, you know, that we've evolved to do. I agree. Like it worries me that we're missing out on a really crucial aspect of learning to be a human by getting rid of that. And yeah, I mean, I don't have kids, but if I had kids, I would probably be very restrictive on how much technology I would allow them to engage with. And even though that seems maybe I'm being the authoritarian, like as a parent, you kind of are the authoritarian figure in your child's life, at least for their formative years. And, you know, I would be very hesitant to allow them to spend too much time with using technology.
Well, there's the thing with that, and I completely and utterly agree with you on that. And the thing that comes around, and this will actually shine a light on one of the points where I say about, you know, the things you can do to get around this, is that the reality is for a lot of parents, it's just much easier to do it. Because if you don't do that, you need to play with your kid.
Yeah.
You say, I want to play Spaceman. You're coming to get me. And you've got to join in. You've got to play, because the phone's not there to do it for you. So you've got to be the one who's there. You've got to be the one who's helping them imagine that scenario and play that game. That's your job. So I think that's the thing, because you say you're kind of being authoritarian by saying, no, you can't do that. But really, you're not saying, no, you can't do that. It doesn't even become an option because you're there.
Yes.
You're there, and you're the game. You're the first source of information, affection, engagement, everything that you can think of. That's like your number one job. And that's one thing, actually, you know, oh, we want to go for a night out, or we want to crack open a bottle of wine here, play with the iPad or something like that. And this is what I was going to say, is one of the ways that you can get over this stuff. Think for yourself, where, you know, and start to make decisions for yourself in general is to admit your laziness. Because when you outsource a decision, you don't want to have to think about it. So it's just admitting to yourself that, actually, do you know what? The reason why I'm letting someone else make this decision for me is because I can't be bothered to. And either that will bother you or it won't. And for me, if I do that to myself, that bothers me. I'm like, well, actually, hang on a sec, should I be making this decision for myself? And that in turn makes you accountable. And that was one of my other things. I wrote down, be accountable.
Yeah.
Be accountable for your decisions. Own what you're doing. Own, you know, and that's whether it goes right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of I'll whip back to finances very, very quickly here. And that's something that a lot of people do, where they outsource the decision on borrowing. They enter into a financial agreement that they're not sure they can afford to pay because it's something that they want to buy. And then it's the lender's fault that they entered into that agreement. Even though they had the money, they had the service, they just couldn't pay it back. But that was it's their fault. They shouldn't have lent it to me. They don't take ownership of that decision.
Yeah.
So you've got to, that's all I'll say on that. It's just an example of where people don't own their decisions. And I suppose bringing back to this kind of counterfactual thinking, is use it. Picture yourself in the future. Do better. Imagine a version of yourself that's making their own decisions, and you know, whether that's with money, whether that's with health, whether that's with your kids or whatever it might be, you know, use this. It's there. It's amazing. I'm tapping my head while I said that. I realise it's a podcast. use your head. I don't want to go too inspiration, but don't wait for other people to do the right thing as well.
Well, before you do, I actually want you to go inspirational. But before you do, because I like that to be the last thing, is the inspirational message. So first of all, let people know. I don't know if they can find you now because you're not on Twitter. But maybe if you're not letting people know where they can find you, say hi to the Twitter fam, and then give us your inspirational message, and then we'll sign it off there.
Cool. So yeah, I miss it as well a little bit. I miss the Twitter folks, the Twitter fam. It's nice actually. You see something comes up, you see it in the news, and you know that there's a load of people, thousands, that you can go and you can relate to and go, do you know what? This really wound me up, and I know it wound you up too. Let's all have a good moan about it. And I do kind of miss that a bit. I do. I won't lie. But yeah, you'll be better off without it though. I bet you edit that out.
All right. Inspirational message, go, and then we'll leave it there.
So yeah, it's that don't wait for other people to do the right thing. I think so often we sit down and we go, oh, there's no point doing the right thing because no one else will do it. Everyone else is just doing the easy thing, but don't. There's ways you can do it, and there's benefits to it. I use the example of buying tack from China all the time, and I made a policy a few months ago that I won't buy anything that's been made in China. And I don't know if anyone knows, it's incredibly difficult to do. You got to do like painstaking research for hours and things like that. The result of it is, I won't drag on and on and on about it because I don't be harping on about it. But the result is that I end up shopping local more often than not, or worst case, or British from British companies, or worst case European. This was a saga. It's made in Switzerland. It took me a year to find a water bottle that wasn't made in China.
Wow!
But it was worth it. And I don't. The result of it is, I don't. You know, this like buying little tack and buy this, buy that. I don't buy any of it now. I hardly spend any money anymore just by doing that. But the point is, it's not. You don't have to go and do that. It's whatever you believe in. don't wait for someone else to do it. If you know that you can do it, if we're all going to sit here and say we're libertarians, we believe in free market, the most important one is the vote. The most important vote is the vote with your wallet. Start voting with your wallet now, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. It's been great.
Take it easy.